some students who are your students may go on to law school. We ask our area law schools for students who started in community colleges who are now in law school, and we couldn't get 3 better law students. I did promise them that in one of our earlier videos, Greta Van Susteren was a student, and I have that file footage, so I told them when they become famous that I will be cashing in on these videos. But anyway, I'm going to ask them only one question, and I will let them expound with the things they think they want to know. Now, and then for those of you on that side of the table, if you want to come around and stand at some point so you can see them, I'm sorry, but we're trying to capture them for video purposes.
We just want to make sure that we're not in this video, so I'm shoving food.
No, you're not. Jacinia, double check, so you're not at all. But the one question that I want to ask you is, looking back on your law school career, now that you're in law school.
Yeah, he's
what?
ready.
What?
Can you start over?
Okay.
He wasn't ready, I'm sorry.
No problem. Tell me when. Give me a.
Excuse me.
It's lights.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
When we're responding to the questions, where do you want us to face?
The camera.
Directly. So,
Oh, yeah.
you can look someone else?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, to the camera. And that's why I asked everybody.
I'm sorry. No.
See, that's a professional.
And where do you want, when they answer the question, should they be looking there at you? Or should they look at Ken?
That's how we use your government right there.
Yeah.
President, vice president.
This one, or does it matter?
Secretary of State.
Okay. So that's a really good question. It's either this one or this one. Yeah.
Okay. Ready? I want to ask you just one question. These are educators, many of whom have been your educators, your inspirations. Looking back, now that you're in law school, looking back, what would you like to have had at the stages you were in community college that you did not have in order to prepare you for your eventual decision to go to law school and to become a lawyer? And I'll let anybody start. Desmond, you look like you want to jump in.
Well, being fortunate to have attended Miami-Dade College, the paralegal program that they have there, which happens to be ABA approved, there's not much that I missed as far as in relation to my law school career. If I had to pick one thing, it would be the implementation of more logic problems or more critical thinking courses while going through the paralegal studies program. And probably in addition to that, probably some classes that's geared towards LSAT preparation that's implemented or infused into the paralegal program, as opposed to having it being separate from it.
Jose, how about your experience?
I agree with everything Desmond said. One of the things that I found most helpful when I was in Miami-Dade was when I became involved with Motor United Nations. That was it was a very helpful experience as far as the public speaking, the critical thinking, just sort of like the team atmosphere that we had. So I think if Miami-Dade would have offered some sort of mock trials type of experience, I think I would have been interested in that. And I think that would have been sort of like a helpful opportunity to help students that might be interested in law school get some sort of experience. And I agree with the sort of like the offside comment. Just getting the students more prepared towards those law classes.
I definitely agree with everything that my colleagues have said. My experience from Broward Community College, I would have loved to have more class offerings that perhaps were just the beginnings of the law, whether it was business or torts or something to introduce you to exactly the type of doctrinal courses that you would learn from in law school. In addition, particularly on career days or advising, I never had an advisor mention anything about law school as a potential option. I think perhaps having a little bit more connection with the career development offices, with academic advisors in terms of creating a pathway and making it an option. And lastly, I had the benefit of critical thinking classes because I was an economics major. However, I could imagine had I not chosen that type of major, I would not have gotten exposure to more of the critical thinking type of classes.
Tell me about the faculty member that inspired, without naming that person, because they might be in this room. The faculty member that inspired you the most, and what about that faculty member inspired you?
Well, you know, it's hard to really pick any one faculty member. I would say the entire paralegal department at Miami-Dade College, including administration, they all inspired me. I think what really grabbed me the most was the fact that when I enrolled at Miami-Dade College, I was homeless. I lived at a shelter 24 blocks from here. And, you know, I was welcomed like anyone else. You know, even though at the time inside I might have felt different, you know, and then being older, going back to school with a bunch of younger students, there are some apprehensions there. But the faculty welcomed me with open arms, and you could immediately tell that not only did they have a passion for what they were teaching, but they had a compassion for you as an individual. And so that is what really gripped me from the onset and carried me through my entire career at Miami-Dade College.
I come from the Honors College, so you know the Honors College at Miami-Dade by itself is sort of a very enclosed environment where the purpose, sort of you know, the way that the college was set up is to have a good faculty-student ratio. So we had a lot of support from the faculty, and you know it was sort of designed that way. So I think you know, all of my professors were very helpful to me. I think the person that sort of like made the most difference for me was my advisor from the college. And the reason for that is that he sort of like opened my eyes to the possibilities that I had after Miami-Dade. Coming from Hialeah High, and you know, from a family that not a lot of people have gone to college. I was the first one to go to college. I didn't know a lot of what my options were after sort of like graduating, or sort of like even my own potential was. But you know, my advisor at the Honors College, he kept, you know, he always told me, oh, you know, after Miami-Dade, you're gonna apply to Georgetown, because that's the best school for political science. And I always told him, yeah, I'm gonna do as you say. I'm gonna apply. But in my mind, my mentality was always to stay here in Miami after school and go to FIU or go to another state school. But you know, he was always persistent. You have to apply to this school. You have to apply. And if it wouldn't have been for that type of pressure and that sort of motivation that he inspired me to apply, I would have probably, you know, I wouldn't have probably gone to where I went to school, which was Georgetown, and then, you know, coming back to Miami and that, because I would have never thought about that.
Chanel, if I could just change the question a little bit for you. I know you said you majored in econ, and for a lot of students, the concepts, the analytical concepts are a challenge to find courses. How did you get to become an econ major?
Well, I ended up choosing econ after taking business. Started off as business administration, and realized that in courses like college algebra and statistics, I did very well, and I actually encountered professors who noticed the talent in terms of analytical and numbers, and started discussing with them other opportunities where I could blend my love for numbers with my love for writing and researching. And that's what geared me towards economics, and also the future that it could potentially bring me into, which ended up meshing nicely with law school. So it was definitely from professors who noticed something in me, took the time to sit with me and discuss how to develop that skill, and creating a pathway going forward to make the best of it, to make the most of it.
Before you got here, we talked a lot about democracy and the power of education. Many people view a career in law as a leadership position. Do you feel the same way, and do you have any evidence in your personal life that right now that you have assumed leadership roles that you might not have before? Absolutely.
I think we all come out of law school wanting to do good and thinking the best of making a difference. And sometimes it seems that once you actually get into the field, your work may seem so minute compared to the grand scheme of things, but there are plenty of opportunities to lead even before getting out of school. Currently, I mentor first-year students. I actually have gone back to my alma mater and have mentored students from FAU, which is where I transferred to and finished. They're in the application pool, bringing them on campus, touring with them, inviting them to moot court, mock trial things. I've also helped judge 1L students and preparing them for oral arguments. I'm on the editorial board for Law Review. I reach out and encourage particularly minority students to apply for these things, to write on, to take a stance and realize that what they do is going to affect the generation coming behind us. So absolutely.
Desmond or Jose, would you like to comment about public service and things activities you may be involved in?
Well, with my background, you know, early on I realized that our society was only as strong as its weakest link, and I looked at the weakest link as being our children, returning citizens, the elderly, and so when I went to Miami-Dade, you know, it was like I was at home, and it helped foster that line of thinking. At Miami-Dade, there's a community service department that specializes in pairing students with community service opportunities. And then one of my professors helped us start Society of Law and Community Service, which is an organization that pairs paralegal students with community service opportunities. So from the very beginning, I was, you know, cultivated in giving back to the community. And so when we looked at the practice of law, you know, what we seen was that to best help a people, we have to understand the laws or policies that govern that people or have an impact on those people. And so I looked at getting into law as a way of being more effective in helping others. And that was definitely a culture that has been fostered at Miami-Dade College that I took on to FIU College of Law. And so, I mean, today it's kind of crazy for me now. You know, I am president of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. I've served on the Miami-Dade Homeless Trust Board. I work as an organizer and activist in the state. I've served on the Gang Reduction Task Force for former Attorney General of the state. I even run transitional housing right now for returning citizens and recovering addicts. You know, and it's all about really just giving back. And I think that is the essence of education, because what is the use of the knowledge that you attain in college if you don't use it to make the world a better place? And so that is something that I found resonated throughout Miami-Dade College, and I was definitely fortunate to be a part of that atmosphere or environment.
Jose, do you want to add any views on public service and the value?
Yeah, I mean, for me, public service is very important. As far as the comment that you mentioned about democracy and leadership, you know, that's something that's very personal to me. I was born in Cuba, and I came to the United States when I was 12, and that was part of the reason that inspired me to become an attorney, and it was appreciation for the rule of law. And you know, I appreciate what we have in this country, and you know, the Constitution, the respect for the law, and just, you know, seeing how the law, which sometimes we take it for granted and we might not realize it, the impact that it can have on people's life and the way that it can shape, you know, families and people and what you do and the way that you see the world. So that's why I wanted to become an attorney, and I think going to Miami-Dade and Miami-Dade giving me the tools to really push me to my next level, to push me beyond my limits and just give me the maturity and the vision to accomplish my goals. I think that's very important, and I appreciate that. And I know that without having that opportunity, I couldn't have done the things that I've done. I couldn't be in the place that I am right now if I wouldn't have had that help. So, you know, giving back to the community and being involved is something very important for me. that's why now it's, you know, it's the first year in law school. I'm gonna participate in the street law program, where I'm gonna go back to my old high school and sort of, you know, be a mentor and just sort of like help those students that were in my same position, help them see what they have ahead of them, and sort of like encourage them.
I'm glad you mentioned that. A lot of the students who may see the footage that we're shooting today may be in high school, thinking about dropping out of high school, may have no goals and aspirations. What would you tell them about education from your perspective that might motivate them to continue to stay in school?
I'll start. For students who may be questioning where their future may lead and what to do about it, I definitely would encourage them to think outside of the box. I believe that as adolescents tend to focus on the situation right in front of them, and they can't see the bigger picture. Particularly adolescents who come from communities where they're not necessarily seeing doctors or attorneys, they're not seeing professionals. It's difficult to see beyond that. And in my discussions that I've had, for example, I went back to a high school, I won't say the name, but they take in students who have been expelled or suspended. Many of them have backgrounds, convictions, things of that nature. And speaking with that group, I always stress to them that the world is much bigger than what they see it, and that they should always think big, dream the impossible. And if they come even close to it, they should pat themselves on the back and keep going. I came from a background where I was the first to graduate high school, college, now in law school, didn't know anything about getting scholarships or where I was going to find the money to go to school. And those are the things that I also tell them, that as long as you put forth the effort, there will be someone there to take your hand, and there are people who are always paying it forward, and that goes back to that public service and someone being there to hold their hand and walk them through the application process, and to not get bogged down by what seems impossible, but to just really dream big and go after it and keep on pushing.
Jose, you mentioned street law. What are some of the activities that you are either looking forward to or that you've already helped the high school students undertake since you've been active with street law?
Well, I'm going to start next year, the program, but Hialeah High, which is the high school that I went to, they have a program for mock trial, and just sort of like helping them, they prepare a case, and then they get ready for that, and then they compete with other local schools. So, just being there for them, for the students, I think it's very important, because as she said, the students from these schools, they might be questioning where they want to go to college, if that's the right thing for them. They might have their parents telling them one thing: you have to work, you have to do this, and they're really in a difficult position. So I think that it's important for them to see students like ourselves that we're in their same position, and see and just have that presence, and know that people have been where they are, and that there's a different way, there's a different path. And if they dream it, and if they apply themselves to their goals, that they can achieve it, no matter what their circumstances might be. So that's what I hope to do with the Street Law program.
I'm gonna ask one more question, and if anybody else has it, please let me. What kind of lawyer do you see yourself being? What kind of law do you want to practice? Have you thought about that, or are you exploring several options? If you could, either way, how who wants to talk?
Well, when asked that question about what type of law I would like to practice, the immediate response would be public interest law. But I do not necessarily know whether I'll be actively practicing public interest law, but I know I would definitely be advocating for the rights of the voiceless or underprivileged individuals in our communities. That's where my passion is at. I do not necessarily have to be in the courtroom, logging in hours, for a big firm. I think where my heart, where the work is going to be, is on the streets, really, and dealing with the need that's there.
Chanel, did you have that?
Yes, my interest is very closely related to business. So I'm interested in corporate business litigation, For a couple of reasons. One being my background is economics. I really have a love for numbers, operations, and the law, and using those things in conjunction with one another. The other reason I feel so passionate about it is that I'm aware of the gap in terms of women in that industry and in terms of minority women in corporate law. And I definitely want to be one of those people who can come open the doors for others. So in terms of what type of lawyer I see myself being, regardless of my practice area, I definitely want to continue to encourage those coming after me to seek out their education. I was a tutor at my undergraduate for students who were on academic probation. I still want to do things to help students kind of find their way in terms of where they want to go in the long run professionally, find their way in terms of just life in general, mentoring, and being a part of the community and using the resources at whatever corporation or big firm I'm at to pursue those endeavors.
And in terms of me, I'm keeping an open mind. You know, what I've experienced by starting law school is that the field of law is so extensive, and there's so many different areas of the law that I think people, you know, what we see on TV, you know, it's not of the options that are there. So even now in law school, what you learn is that there's many different types of law. So my goal is get exposure in different areas, and then see sort of like where that takes me. And I think by having the tools of law school, I think I'll be ready. Just like 6-7 years ago when I was in high school, I couldn't fathom that I was gonna be here. I probably 5-4 years from now, I'm not gonna have any idea of where I'm gonna end up. So I think just being aware and doing what I like, what my interests are.
I mean, if I may, earlier a question was presented earlier about what we would say to the individual that's wavering about going to law school or even college. And I think that another group or another section are those students who think that they might not even fit within that category. With the school to prison pipeline that we have, with the fact that more African American males are in prison or dying on the street as opposed to being in college, there is a message out there for those who might not feel as if they fit within that particular category as far as with having any potential of going to school or even law school at that. And what I can say to them is that, 2005, I was homeless, standing in front of railroad tracks, ready to jump in front of a train. At the time I was homeless, I was addicted to drugs, I was recently released from prison, and I saw no hope, and I wanted to end my life. But something happened to make me cross those tracks, and I went into a substance abuse treatment facility, and from there to a homeless shelter, and while there, I enrolled at Miami-Dade College. And today, I'm a third-year law student with 6 more classes remaining to get my Juris Doctorate. And I say that message because people need to know that there is hope, in spite of the situation that they're in. Because we know that we have students, college students and high school students that might even have a criminal background and think that their life is over. And I'm a living testimony that life is not over. It has just begun once you've made a commitment and you avail yourself to educational opportunities. So yes, education can rescue you from that situation that you're in, and it can propel you into heights that you have never dreamed was possible. Dare to dream in spite of your obstacles. That's the message that I would like to send to the students out there.
I'd like to piggyback on that if I can. For students who are considering starting or they don't have an option or that's where they're going to start as a community college, what would you say to the students who are watching the video in terms of starting at a community college, and talk a little bit about how you made that decision and how it prepared you to get to a 4-year school and then law school, meaning that it's not 13th college. Can you talk directly to the students and sort of inspire them that they can start and look at where you are?
Well, I definitely believe that I'm fortunate because I got to spend my entire 4 years at Miami-Dade College. And I think one of the main advantages of starting out at a community college is that it's not as large. it's much easier for individuals to get lost within a university system as opposed to a college system, to where there's a much smaller ratio of students to faculty members. And therefore, you're able to get your needs attended to much easier. And the fact that you're closer to home, that you would have a support system there as well. One thing I did notice was that there were a lot of returning adults that were going to college that had families, had babies and husbands and wives. And to be able to have that family support there meant a great deal. So community college, to me, would be a stepping stone. It would help prepare you that if you so decide to go to a 4-year university, that you will be conditioned to be able to survive that type of environment.
I mean, I agree with that. I think a community college you can look at it as it's a training ground for, it's a stepping stone, it's a training ground. It's a time that you can prove yourself. If you have plans of going, if you think that you're capable of succeeding and competing in a major university, and you have that desire and that passion and that thirst, I think the community colleges, they offer you the opportunity where you can prove yourself, and that idea that you have in your mind, that you can put it on paper, because you can get good grades, you can participate, you can become involved, you can prove that even though you might have not gotten a good score in a standardized test, that you can prove the caliber and the type of student that you are, the grade that you get, your relationship with your professors. And I think that's a unique opportunity for students like myself that we didn't do as good on the SAT, that we didn't get that really high score to make it into a top school. I think a community college gives us the opportunity where you can excel, and you can train, and you can get ready for that next step. So
my message to students looking to join a community college to start their college career would be 2 separate messages to 2 groups. One, definitely piggyback on what Jose said in terms of it being a place to develop you as a person, as a student, and as a professional, and giving opportunities to students who may not have done so well on certain tests, so that they know that it's not the end of the world, and that many people have walked through these same doors and gone beyond them, starting at or below where they are, and they should still be encouraged and be happy and proud of themselves for even making the commitment to go. And onto that, I would say where you start does not dictate where you end up. So to the other students who may have had the scores but chose for other reasons, like myself, I wanted to be closer to my family. I was a working student, I was a commuter student. Community college gave me the flexibility to do that, to continue working. Professors were understanding that you probably worked, especially if you took night classes. They assumed that you were a working student. A lot of them preferred it that way, and they communicated with the students more. I had incredible professors who didn't choose a community college because there's nothing else to do, but because they wanted to be in the community within a certain demographic of students. So it's definitely, it's a building block. No matter how you look at it, it's not a setback, it's not a second-rate school or in any kind of sense. It's a community that's there to develop you professionally, personally, and just to prepare you for the next step. So,
Any of the 3 of you been in a position where you're surprised that there are not a lot of lawyers who look like you or come from backgrounds similar to yours?
absolutely. Absolutely. I find myself in a lot of situations where I'm in a room full of attorneys that don't look like me, or I'm in a room full of attorneys and I'm the only law student for 2 reasons. One being that, and I could attribute this to community college, being the training ground, working, going to school, juggling many things, and being a professional as well as a student. I learned the value of networking. I learned the value of relationship building, and it was just as important as my grades were. So I was the only law student in a lot of situations because many other law students didn't find the value in going there, but they didn't realize the doors that it opened up later on. Furthermore, I find that a lot of times I'm either the only woman or the only African-American woman, and it's alarming. Recently I went to a national conference for law reviews, and that's in addition to our numbers being low in law school, when you look at these honor organizations like Moot Court and Law Review, it's even less. So I'm in a room with maybe 200-300 law students from editors, editorial boards of law schools all around, and maybe like 5 African Americans in the room. And it makes me think, and it motivates me to think about how I can encourage more students that look like me, that come from backgrounds like me, to not to be their own enemy and stop themselves before they even make the decision to try. And I think, unfortunately, that's part of the problem. So I'm happy that Street Laws is looking to build that gap, looking to create that hope and that opportunity for students like myself, who, you know, could have easily just been a product of their environment.
I'm not surprised at all. I mean, Florida, 1.54 million Floridians are disfranchised. That translates to 1 out of every 4 African American males. And with numbers like that, and with the amount of children that I think Dade County, we had over 250 young black children murdered in our streets. You know, with those numbers, I'm not surprised that I'm one of the very few African American males who are in law school. You know, I think it goes beyond just preparing colleges or community colleges to establish a pipeline for minorities to law school. I think we have to go much deeper than that, and that's part of what my passion and mission is about, is dealing with the root causes, you know, the school to prison pipeline, or the economic or social conditions that breeds numbers like, you know, I just said. You know, and I think that once we really address the underlying issues of race in our country, once we understand the role that it plays in our judicial system, then we're able to create an environment to where the opportunity exists for more African American males and African American females as well in general. And so the answer to that question, no, I'm not surprised. Now, I think the real question is, are we going to allow this trend to continue, or are we going to do something about it to reverse that trend?
Yeah, I think the numbers are, and it's surprising, you know, when you're in that type of environment, whether it's law school or you attend an event, or, you know, even you go to a different state, you see it, and you see that, you know, Hispanics or black students, you know, minority students, you see that difference. And I think that students should use that as a way of empowerment. And I think, you know, it's very hard. And I think that the reason for that is that I think the opportunities are there. It's just the cycle of how people reach those opportunities is difficult. You know, if you're not exposed, if you don't have parents that are lawyers, if you don't have relatives that are lawyers or they've graduated from college, it's really hard to break that circle and to take it upon yourself to do that if you don't have that, you know, those guiding hands helping you. And that's why, you know, having the assistance of professors and people, mentors, they've been there and they've seen it, they see your potential. Having that, I think it's very important, because I think it's hard for people that haven't seen that, you know, haven't had any exposure to that. I think it's hard for them to break that level, and that what that causes is that you see the same people entering the profession. And I think the way to break that is just to empower, you know, those minority students to reach for that, to reach for those goals. And you know, I think there are programs out there that are doing a great job. Even programs like, you know, Street Law is very helpful. But I think it's that sort of circle that the only way that people can break it is by believing in themselves and thinking that they can do it.
Given your background and where you came from, you all have probably the best access to solutions of anyone in the room. How would you build the structure to do the exact things that you're discussing at the table? How would you build the structure, and would you have the time and ability to execute it?
I'm doing it right now while in law school. You know, I think that like I stated previously, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And so in order for our community or our society to be stronger, we have to deal with the weakest. And so I'm definitely leading efforts to help re-enfranchise the 1.54 million Floridians, to give the returning citizens an opportunity to successfully reintegrate back into their community. And I know by that happening, two things will definitely happen to improve the situation. Number one is that we'll have a reduction in the amount of resources that is spent to incarcerate individuals, and those resources will be able to be diverted to educational programs or public safety programs. And number two is that you're going to have a productive citizen that would have a more positive influence on our kids growing up, and that would help stem the flow of our kids negatively interacting with law enforcement officers and giving those kids hope. I think hope is an essential element, particularly around minorities. The longer the child feel that they have a chance to succeed if they go to school, then good things can come from that. And so, yes, I am actively engaging in programs that would help to reverse this trend. And as I stated before, sometimes it's not, we don't have to look at the fruit and try to evaluate the fruit. What we have to do is look at the root of the problem, and by treating the root, the fruit will rectify itself.
In terms of, based on my experience, how I would go about encouraging students like myself or breaking the trend, I would definitely say one effective way is putting people in front of them that look just like them, that are a little closer in age. I find that younger students, adolescents, as we grow up before we're 20, 21, whenever someone much older than us tries to say something, it's kind of, you're older, or you don't understand. I find it more effective when I speak to high schoolers or undergraduate students, because I'm closer in age to them. I tend to have a little bit more legitimacy, or for whatever reason, they value my opinion a little bit more, and the more honest I am, the better reactions I receive. So my recommendations would be to implement some kind of mentorships or system where these students are having students who are closer, or maybe other students, to talk with them, in addition to older mentors for those more mature students who can appreciate and understand that there's value in that, obviously more experienced opinion, and breaking through that. I also find that I would recommend there being some type of something that goes in academically, because minorities tend to struggle in a lot of ends academically more than other students. And then when they're doing well, they don't exactly know what's the next step. So some type of program that helps them academically, prepare them, help them to learn what type of learner they are, whether it's visual or reading, or so that they can maximize and get better grades, not waiting till it's too late at the end of the road, and then looking ahead and helping them prepare for what the next steps are, because a lot of times they just don't know. Now, I didn't know. I just myself happened to get a scholarship, but I'm sure had I applied myself, had I had someone saying you should apply for this or go this way, go that way, my options would have been much wider than they were. But that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I agree with what Chanel said, that it's just, for me, it's just more about the guidance. I think there's a structure out there. There's many programs. There are many scholarships that want to help students. I think what it comes down to is it comes down to the students, and it comes down to the students first believing that they can do that and wanting it, and reaching out to those programs, and just having the mentality that regardless of where you come from, holding true to your dreams and believing that in yourself. And I think that once a student recognizes and they know what they want, the programs are out there to help them, and the structure is out there, and it depends, for the students, the school, the name of the school is just a name. And no matter where you are, if it's the best school, if it's a community college, your experience is gonna be based on what you put into it. What you get out of it is what you're gonna put into it. So I think that with that, I think the structures are all out there. I think it depends on helping the students believe in themselves and believe, and setting those goals and just getting them to reflect on what it is that they want. What type of career do they want? What kind of lifestyle do they want to lead in 10 years, in 5 years? And I think, making them understand that they have it. It's in their hands. The ball is in their hands. Now it's time for them to really apply themselves, to commit to something, because the reality is that it's not easy. Why don't a lot of people? It's not easy. The path is very hard. There are many obstacles. So you need to have a real understanding of what it is that you want and have that dream. And once you have that, everything will happen in a way that doors will open up and you will end up accomplishing it. And I think it's happened to a lot of us.
Many potential students that may want to go into law have been or had some legal entanglements. And so their thought of going into law may be dissuaded. What would be your word of encouragement from your perspectives for that person who has embarked down the wrong path and needs to turn around?
For those students who may have experienced some kind of legal entanglement, I think the words of encouragement that I can give is that what I've learned to do was, instead of looking at my past as an albatross, I look at it as a badge of courage. I think that your past, you actually have an advantage because you have something to show from what you've overcome. Those who do not go through adversities, they don't necessarily have that one defining moment that they can point to and say, look what I was able to overcome. Look what I'm able to achieve. Myself, it's funny because at the end of my second year, I remember in my trial advocacy class, I had to conduct or participate in a mock trial in the actual courtroom. And I remember as I was preparing to give my closing arguments, and I looked up, and right there on the wall was a picture of the judge who used to be in that courtroom. And it so happened I was in the very same courtroom that I was sentenced to 15 years in 2001. And so, when I think about what I've done, I use it as a testament that in spite of being knocked down, in spite of making mistakes, that you can show by your mistakes your ability to overcome, rehabilitate yourself, and be of greater service to the community. Because you have been through these things, because you have made these mistakes, you're now creating an opportunity for you to be an inspiration to people across the country. I've had people now in law school that did not think that they could go to law school, but they read my story in one of the law school magazines. And because they read that story, they believed. And now today they're second-year law students in Iowa, in Jacksonville, Florida, and I believe in Minnesota or California. And so these instances that you may at one time felt ashamed about, there's nothing to be ashamed about when you have rehabilitated and recovered from those mistakes. The only shame you should have is when you continue to make those same mistakes.
To students who may have had some type of legal entanglement in thinking of law school or being dissuaded from applying, and even to those who maybe themselves have not been in that type of situation but have had loved ones, and for some reason they have, a passionate vendetta. A lot of times, sometimes it's a distaste for attorneys or law enforcement officers based on experiences they've had or others. I would dare them to use that passion and make something good of it, because that passion builds character. You're coming in with a purpose, and when you have someone with a purpose and a craft that they cultivate and become good at, that's a mean machine. I mean, there's so much that you can do, and a lot of people search their entire life for something that they're passionate about because they say, you know, once you found it, you never work another day in your life. And I would dare them to use that passion as motivation to make a difference, to make a change, and consider everything that they're doing as if they're planting seeds that will also populate and continue to grow, and their one voice will just travel so much further than you know, they could imagine if they just kept it in.
I would love to continue, but this has been fabulous. I knew you were busy law students. There is a reception this afternoon at University of Miami. You're more than welcome to come. But I know it's getting close to exam time, so I did not want to impose on your time. But thank you so much. We couldn't have asked for a more interesting panel than the three of you. Thank you very much.
But stick around for one more minute because I want you to meet somebody. Just stay here for one more minute. And I want everyone to meet, and then we're going to clean up plates and then we'll move on. That was fabulous.
It could be cut.
So where we are, we're at the law firm of Holland & Knight, which is a large law firm that works all over the country. And Tiffany Lee is a partner in this law firm and also a member of Street Law's board of directors, so she's really our host for this activity. But I want you to hear, but also everyone to hear about the kinds of things that law firms, and this law firm in particular, also does outside of billable hours to reach out to their community to make it a more just community. So Tiffany, talk a little bit about Holland & Knight and their tradition really of this.
Sure. First of all, welcome. I hope you've been comfortable here at the firm. If you haven't been, we'll try to accommodate you recently.
Action.
Can you please tell us your name
My name is Jose Vasquez.
and tell us what your journey from community college to four-year school to law school, and just start by repeating the question.
My journey, my educational journey started at Miami-Dade. I graduated from high school. I went to Miami-Dade for 2 years. I was part of the honors program. After 2 years, I transferred to Georgetown University. I was there for about 2 years and a half. Some of my credits didn't transfer, so I was there for 2 years and a half. And then I came back to Miami, University of Miami for law school.
What motivated you to pursue law? Okay. Can you tell us what your educational journey from community college to law school was?
After graduating from high school, I went to Miami-Dade. I was in Miami-Dade in an honors program for 2 years. After Miami-Dade, I went to Georgetown for about 2 years and a half. And after Georgetown, I came back to Miami, to the University of Miami for law school.
And can you tell us a little bit about what really motivated you to go to law school? My background, coming from Cuba and sort of seeing democracy and interested in government and political science and the law in general, I always felt like studying law was sort of like the right thing for me. So when I went to my college, I majored in political science because it felt like sort of like the track to do, and obviously I learned a lot of the skills that I use now as a law student. I learned it from being a political science student, and what I realized is that the flexibility of being a lawyer and the flexibility like having a law degree gives you, and the practicality of it, that the flexibility that you have, that's what really sort of like motivated me to go to law school. We were talking earlier, and you said that you didn't do so well on the LS. I'm sorry. Okay. So we were talking earlier about going to or taking the LSAT and how difficult it was, but then once you went to law school, it sort of made sense. So if you could just provide some sort of like a quick talking point to the students to tell them the value of taking the LSAT and how important it is to study, but that it does pay off because you can see it in law school.
Yeah, the thing about the LSAT, the LSAT, is that once you start taking it for the first time, it sort of like doesn't make sense, because of what you think as a lawyer. Why are you taking, why does logic matter? Why does reasoning matter? Why does reading comprehension matter? But those skills are usually very helpful, and once you get into law school, you see that a lot of times you have to sort of like teach yourself subjects and classes, because what you get from professors and when you get in the classroom might not be enough to help in the final exam. So I think having, you know, those skills that you have to develop, that you really have to teach yourself something. That's something that really resonated with me, that I thought when I was preparing for the LSAT, that I, you know, for especially for the logic games and the logic problems, it's something that you have to do it to get it. And I felt like that relates to now that I'm going through my first year, that a lot of the classes I just have to, a lot of the learning occurs on your own, and you have to sort of by yourself read the cases and really try to understand it. And I think that was, you know, if I would have had that experience, I think I would have done better on the LSAT. But just understanding that the only way to sort of like do good is by putting in the time, putting the effort, and just doing it.
Talk to the Latino males who are thinking about law school.
The male specifically.
Like, yeah. Because there is, you know, we talked about that today. There's a lack of Latinos and African American males who are even just graduating high school, let alone thinking about college. Can you provide some words of encouragement, or just there is a need for Latino males in general to go to law school?
My advice for Latino males would be to think about where you want to be. Take your life, your career, take it into your own hands. And, you know, the place, whatever you want to be 5 years from now, don't let that be a product of where you were raised, how you look, you know, what language you speak. Just take it, you know, your future is on your hands. So I think people need to have that responsibility and be aware that whatever choices you make, that's what's gonna determine where you eventually end up. And there's options out there. And, you know, one of those options is to focus on school. Just because you might be studying doesn't mean that you won't be able to work. There's many programs out there that people want to help you, and your experiences, especially for us as, you know, Latino students, that we have a lot of responsibility to our families, and a lot of times we're, you know, providers for our families. And just know that the school can give you that opportunity, that just because you're going to classes doesn't mean that you won't be able to have a job or you won't be able to provide for your family, because you might just still be able to do that and work on your own future and have a career that later on is going to help your family, or whatever situation is going to help it even more.
And the last question is, tell me something good and positive about law school. So something good and positive about law school would be?
Law school is great. It's only one exam at the end of the semester. You don't have to be worrying about the constant pressure that you have to turn in this paper, you have to turn in that paper. It's very independent studying, you know, and you get a lot of responsibility, and it's sort of on you, and it's very independent. It's very, very independent. You don't have, you know, pressure from professors, from different people to be doing things and to be turning in work. It's really on the student to put in the effort and to do well.
Ready?
So if you could tell us what your name is and your educational journey from, you know, after high school and to law school.
Okay. My name is Chanel Rowe, and my educational journey from high school to law school was a bit of round the mulberry bush and come back around. So I was a working student. I worked even when I was in high school. I graduated high school a year early and got out and didn't quite know what I was going to do, but college sounded like a good idea. So I went to college. I worked while I was in college. I started off at a community college because it was more affordable and I could be close to home. Being an only child and Caribbean parents, we tend to cling to your your younger ones. So it allowed me to stay home and continue on to my journey. And eventually I went to undergrad at Florida Atlantic University, where I became very involved with academics. And my passion for law was with me all along, based on some of the injustices that I've seen family members experience with legal problems. And my father passed away when I was about 4 months old in the presence of law enforcement officers, and that has also been a motivating factor. But I decided to makes use of my circumstances and the things that I've seen people experience, and to use my voice to help others. And that's what ultimately propelled me to make the decision to go to law school.
Perfect. Okay, go ahead.
Tell us something fun about law school. Everyone always has such negative opinions. It's so hard. Tell us something. You're
2L.
2L, so
Yeah.
tell us something fun.
Something fun about law school is that I believe you make some of your best friends that you'll have for the rest of your life there. Because you are in the trenches together. It's hard, I mean, it's hard, but the great thing is that everyone is going through it with you, and there are a lot of people in the room who can relate to you. So you're not alone. Law school levels the field for everyone. I, graduated at the top of my class from a university that's not a top tier university. But I have colleagues who graduated at the top of their class from top tier. But when you get into the law school classroom, everyone starts at the same level. So it's comforting in that sense. You are growing together, you're learning together, and you're going through this dynamic experience together. It's definitely nothing like anything you've ever experienced. It's not like undergrad, it's not like high school, absolutely even further from high school, but it's a great experience that you are able to build new relationships with people in, and people who understand you and will continue to understand you as you embark upon your career.
One last question. Tell us why it's important for young girls who look like you, African American, Latina, Caribbean, young ladies, to consider law school, whether they decide to be, a litigator or prosecutor, or just something else. But just kind of speak to them. If you had an opportunity to sort of, have a room full of young girls or even high school students, tell us what you would tell them. Why is it important to see, people like yourself?
It's very important for people like myself, young women from minority backgrounds, African American, myself being Caribbean descent, to consider law school, because you could be that paradigm shift. Despite what the field may look like, despite the fact that it doesn't look like you, there aren't many, people who look just like you, you could be the one that opens the door for 6, 7, 10, 20 attorneys behind you. And because the presence isn't there does not mean that you're not capable of it or you're not qualified to do it. And the fact that it doesn't look like you does not mean that you wouldn't fit in there. I would encourage them to bring everything about themselves to the table, their personality, their character, and allow this experience to change them for the better, and consider the good that it will do for those who come after them.
Awesome.